Welcome to our presentation. This presentation is designed for great sports coaching and the development of community sport. We aim to enhance the work of coaches through introducing you to the constraints-led approach. This video was introduced to you by Sam Palmer, Theo Davis, Ryan Robertson Smith, Oliver Bickley, and Joe Cowlishaw. There will be many ideas and examples which will be introduced to you throughout our presentation, but our overall aims of this coaching development video are to provide great sports coaching with a useful resource which the coaching community will be able to use to enhance their coaching practice, whilst understanding what is meant by being athlete-centered and identifying the constraints-led approach with sports pedagogues in mind. And finally, an insight into how the athlete-centered approach and constraints-led approach can be incorporated into practice and its overall uses for sports coaches. Considering coaches have more obtained access to academic literature and various approaches, there is still large amounts of control over sports coaches from governing bodies higher up the chain of command. There is more to coaching than just standing on the sideline shouting and ordering players around. This is considered an older style of coaching and leading a group of players. Sporting individuals need to have more control and cooperation over their own sporting discovery. The work of academics should not be ignored, and incorporating theory needs to be at the forefront of coaching success. It is important to have a range of different approaches for sporting individuals to maintain their engagement and development. Today, we'll introduce to you the athlete-centered and constraint-led approaches. Coaches can evolve their practice through becoming more athlete-centered. The athlete-centered approach focuses on the individual's achievements and was first discovered by Lynn Kidman. This helps individuals to become more inspired, creating a positive learning environment for all. Athlete-centered coaching promotes an educative and holistic process for sporting development, encouraging athletes to discover sporting elements for themselves, which can suggest deeper meaning and understanding of why they may have displayed something well, or perhaps change an aspect in training scenario they were unsure about. It is important to mention the notion of a holistic coaching style. Targeting all aspects is key to becoming a successful coach, as this will mirror your work for your athletes' performances. Players will become more confident and courageous with their decisions by deepening their understanding of their game, which has been influenced by their own efforts. Coaches will then become more of a resource to performers, rather than a figurehead individuals can rely on.
The constraints-based approach is the topic of today's discussion. Noel in 1986 developed the constraints-led approach, which has since become a more viable educational choice for teachers and coaches as it advocates a more hands-off approach to teaching and learning within sport and physical education. A constraints-led approach aims to uncover the nature of interacting constraints that influence learners' skill acquisition. While the constraints-led approach was originally based on a more dynamical systems model of human movement, more recent research has merged ecological psychology theories. Understanding ecological dynamics is necessary for successfully employing a constraints-led approach, as these underpinning notions show themselves as guiding principles for the construction of a constraints-led approach in practice environments. So what are the constraints? Constraints are defined as boundaries that shape how behavior emerges. During goal-directed activity, the learner is forced to choose stable and effective movement patterns due to the interaction of multiple constraints. A slight alteration in one component of the system can cause large-scale global changes to arise. Constraints are not always limiting or negative factors. They are all the factors that influence learning and performance at any moment in time. Identified by Noel in 1986, constraints can refer to the individual, the environment, and ultimately the task. The individual, also known as the performer's constraint, refers to physical features such as somatotypes, weight, height, fitness levels, muscle type, or genetic makeup of the specific performer. Psychological elements such as anxiety and motivation may also influence how people approach a movement activity. These many specific limitations demonstrate the various approaches that can be employed to overcome mobility issues. These distinct performer traits might be considered as resources for each individual, directing how each learner approaches specific task issues, or as qualities that can lead to individual-specific adaptations. Physical and social environmental restrictions are both present in the environmental constraints. Gravity, ambient temperature, natural light, terrain, auditory input, and other environmental elements that aren't normally task adaptations are examples of physical factors. Cultural norms, such as family support networks, social groups, and societal expectations, provide an influential environmental social constraint for learners and more experienced athletes during performance. Finally, there are task constraints to consider. The aim of a certain task, activity conventions, and the implements or equipment utilized throughout the learning experience are all examples of task constraints. Unlike the other constraints, the coach can readily adjust the constraints, such as changing equipment, deciding on facilitation style, or establishing boundaries and goals. Small adjustments in the task might result in significant changes in the learner's behavior. Fajan, Riley, and Turvey explained affordances to be a concept that describes a chance for action that mixes the objective nature of the environment with the learner's subjective nature. This means that each setting has its own set of characteristics, and each person sees chances for action from their own unique perspective. Learners require simplified, realistic learning settings in which they can tune into information and make sensible, well-informed decisions based on thorough awareness of their own capabilities in each particular situation. Affordances are fluid and fluctuate over time and in different situations. An example of this would be when lifting weights. Exhausted performers perceive weights to be much heavier than when they are not tired.
In this video, we have Woodland Normal Wills being coached by our excellent coaching staff. As shown in the video, this is visually how constraints are applied within a football-based coaching session, but what elements are actually being constrained? Firstly, Ozlak 2012 stated that the weather is an uncontrollable constraint, which, and for our session, went in the favour to challenge the athletes. The conditions were cloudy, with a slight damp astroturf, causing the athletes to focus on their ball control as it would skid across the surface at high speeds, leading to them adapting to the environment. Next is constraining the player participating density to a 6v6 rather than the original 11v11. Limiting player amounts means that our 11-a-side athletes have to work extra hard covering the missing positions. Stevens et al. 2016 found that this constraint would contribute to improvements of cardiovascular system and the use of speed during football matches. The final constraint-led practice in this clip was the limitation of first-time finishing. What is first-time finishing? Well, this is where the football player kicks the ball with only one touch as an attempt to score from this contact. Shown beautifully by the participants in grey, this constraint means that the athlete has to be extra precise and niche when deciding to shoot towards the goal. It is extremely difficult to score from this type of shot, but it does help improve ball control with our team in a critical scoring areas. Now let's move on to the next clip. In this clip, it shows our next constraint-led activity. No goals was our major constraint. This meant that the focus was taken off shooting and focused more on the keep the ball style of play. Keep the ball, Barca style of play, or the Swansea way as I like to call it, focused on the possession retention way of football. It is more statistically pleasing way of football that can be caused by certain constraints. The constraint of three-touch football also follows this, as it's restricted our athletes in how many times they could touch the ball before passing. This would naturally generate a Swansea way of playing, moving the ball, creating space, and keeping the ball. Combining both constraints with no goals and limited touches allowed for a fast-paced, free-flowing game that was satisfying by our expert team and the athletes involved. But how can we avoid overconstraining? It is crucial not to force any tasks upon the players that don't seem realistic. As a coach, using smart targets is essential for player development. Making the targets unrealistic demotivates athletes and can prevent their future participation. Furthermore, this may hinder the drills and activities to be representable to a real game scenario. During practice, players must perform to all the action possibilities and affordances within the game scenario, ensuring a perfect working environment. Even with all of these constraints, tactics, abilities and ways that we could coach people, a successful workplace environment needs to be achieved in order for everyone to succeed. Athletes and coaches need a good relationship. The encouragement of self-determination, strong support, good communication, and the usage of self-goal setting are some of the ways that this could be achieved.
When developing a successful learning environment, it is the coach's responsibility to set the overall tone of the coaching session they are leading in order for all members to feel a sense of involvement. This can be maintained through aspects such as the coach or coaches and athletes having a strong bond or relationship. This makes leading sessions much easier as the athletes are more likely to listen to the coach. By encouraging self-determination, it allows for the athletes to start to believe in themselves and their own abilities within sessions. Being a coach requires the ability to provide adequate support when needed. The athletes will see the coach as a comforting figure, which is why they may seek support from them. Communicating effectively helps to get more complex points across easier, which will benefit the athletes. And using goal setting will help to enhance motivation from the athletes because they will want to work towards a goal and complete tasks set by the coach. According to Senko 2001, achievement goal theory has become one of the most prominent and important theories of motivation in educational research for the last 25 years. This makes it most important in the sporting side of education due to how important the theory can be when conducting pedagogical work. It is seen as the attempts or decisions that athletes make to succeed in their specific field or sport. This also involves overcoming obstacles and factors to perfect a certain task that they are currently undergoing. This theory is used thoroughly and widely throughout the sporting world and is mostly used when teaching or coaching in sporting situations. Coaches can use this theory to further develop their sessions to be more in-depth. Seifert, 1995, spoke about how within achievement goal theory there are multiple factors that go into theorizing the theory of achievement goal theory. It has been seen that students or athletes are viewed to pursue three main goals. These three main goals are what make up achievement goal theory. However, the two main goals which is focused on largely are ego-oriented and task-oriented goals. These two factors are what are used by participants when they are motivated of obtaining goals or objectives set by their peers. Task-oriented goals are normally developed when students or athletes are eager on attaining mastery or competence. Within a pedagogical scenario, this may be an athlete attempting to master a particular skill within their chosen sport. Ego-oriented goals are developed or adopted when participants are striving to establish superiority over their peers and demonstrate a stronger ability within a certain sport. In a coaching aspect, it may be seen as a particular student or athlete who may be better at a particular sport than their peers, and this participant sees this as an opportunity to assert dominance and take control due to their stronger ability and knowledge. The acronym TARGET stands for Task, Authority, Recognition, Grouping, Evaluation, and Timing. TARGET has been recognized as very influential when it comes to determining a mastery motivational climate. Further adding on to this, TARGET is also influential in determining mastery or ego climates in achievement situations. Including TARGET into pedagogical work can help to develop more in-depth skills if used as a structural tool in sessions. By using each section of the acronym correctly within a session, it will help to support the structure and provide a sense of achievement for those involved, as they will feel as though they are working more pedagogically towards their goals and tasks.
Here in these next few slides, I will be discussing the impacts of motivation on a player's performance. Motivation is defined as a desire or willingness to do something, their enthusiasm. Therefore, the term motivational climate is referring to an environment that is created by coaches which allows their players to thrive and achieve a common goal. Boykstoss details that players' interpretation of sport differs between every individual, which consequently results in every player's motivation for playing will be different. As a coach, it is imperative that we understand how our players work and which ways motivate them to thrive in these environments. For years, coaches have only taken a psychological standpoint and rarely looking at the bigger picture. However, as research has progressed, coaches are now having a pedagogical outlook to how to shape their team's motivational climate. As seen on the model to the right, Morgan has broken down motivational climates to be psychological, sociological, and pedagogical. The reasons for this is because understanding players' motivational needs must be coupled with how this translates to a group dynamic and whether this is damaging to the common goal of the team. As practitioners using latest studies within coaching is the difference between good coaches and great coaches, as creating cohesion within a team is a large factor which contributes to a team's success. Mastery climates. In the words of Hegbo, is performance structures that revolves around supporting effort, cooperation, and emphasis on individual and team development, learning, and mastery of tasks. In simpler terms, a mastery climate is a learning environment where players can experiment and make their own creative decisions without being penalized by the coaching staff. Furthermore, a mastery climate requires coaches to stray away from the concept that achievement is the main goal and development of skills and team dynamics is the real aim. Warburton states coaches who are successful with this or are looking to adopt this climate should follow the acronym TARGET created by Epstein, as seen on the right. Abiding to these concepts will create a more inclusive environment for players, motivating them to perform consistently at a high level without having their confidence knocked by coaches, where in contrast a performance climate deems mistakes should be punished and achievement is everything. Research that was conducted by Treasure found players treated in the mastery climate had mature morals and were much more eager to play, where another coach who adopted a performance climate had players who suffered from low morale and lacked motivation to play. An example of this during a game of football, the decision to go in for a rough shoulder barge would be avoided as it would affect the team. However, players from a performance climate would potentially attempt the dangerous challenge as fear of failure would result in punishment from their coach. Risk-taking and movement patterns in sport has always been coached, for the most of the time, in a straight, linear fashion with the use of repetitions of the same movement during a drill, usually taught within a constraints-led approach. However, issues arise in the game-based situations, where certain dynamics and situations are changed and decisions must be made on the fly. If game situations are not relevant to our drill movements, then why are we coaching in this way? Well, Woods describes wayfinding as a theoretical framework which requires participants to take notice of their environment and then adapt to the situation, drawing upon previous experiences. This would require coaches to move away from the idea of the perfect shot or pass, as there is no one right answer. The reason for this is no two shots or two passes will be the same in the game, and wayfinding in training allows players to experiment in a safe environment. Providing learners opportunities to modify their movement behaviors appropriately in the search for the functional coordination solution is what David suggests being effective coaching. Real-world applications of this would have been done already in sport. An example of this was Don Bradman, who was the most successful batter in cricket history. This was due to his unique training style. He would practice batting with a cricket stump and hitting a marble being bounced off a metal pole. This is a perfect example of what wayfinding entails, countless repetitions of the same drill but coming up with clever solutions to the problem. Training within this theoretical framework allows far greater development and creativity for players.
Today, we've considered the constraints-led approach and how this can be implemented into practice, the importance of becoming an athlete-centered coach and how this can enhance your community programs, the use of target, how this can be implemented into a coaching environment, and finally, integrating achievement goal theory, motivational, and mastery climate to further better your coaching knowledge. On behalf of all the team, thank you for watching. Feel free to post any questions you may have in the comment section below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you very soon.